Chris, you really don't know. Like, you panic to find an outlet. You only panic to find an outlet when you need an outlet, right?
Yep. Yep.
Like, you don't know where the outlets are until you have to have an outlet to plug in. Low quality Corey is back in the house,
He is
folks.
back in the house,
A
man.
good afternoon, everybody. A
What's going
Thursday,
on?
September 28th, 2023. You are listening to the South Side Beat right here on DK Pittsburgh Sports, of course, every Monday through Friday from 3 until 3:30 Eastern. He is Chris Halicke. I am Corey Crisan. I was reading through the pre-show comments on YouTube, and a lot of ref talk going on. Which refs are worse? I've seen the question: NBA, NFL, or MLB coming from Hodge, and that's debatable by this stage, I think, Chris.
Well, I think I mean, you could talk about which one's worse. I mean, because I remember specifically, the NBA referees, getting in trouble, or at least the one getting in trouble for, like gambling or whatever it was, like during the 06 finals, one where the Mavs got screwed. And no, I'm not saying that as a butthurt fan. They really did get screwed. Dwayne Wade, all he had to do was flop around and he'd get a foul every single time.
Yes.
And then when you find out that 06 finals was kind of rigged, you're like, oh, wow, shocker. So I think about that. But then the issue I have with Major League umpires more than anything is just the ego. When you have, umpires who've been around for a long time, like Ron Culpa, saying, like, I can do whatever I want to managers, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So, honestly, I'd probably say out of all of the officials, I'd have to actually in terms of the best, I'd probably have to give the edge to NFL or NHL, honestly.
If you ever want to laugh your tail off, just Google Lakers Kings Fix You. The song Fix You by Coldplay is literally set to a montage
all-time song.
The 2001 Western Conference Finals in the NBA, Lakers versus Kings. There's a shout out from Mark Caboli shouting you out, Chris. Chris will be in Houston.
I will be in Houston.
He will be in Houston. I have your credentials sitting in my backpack as we speak.
Tim Donahue, by the way, your favorite barber, Tim Donahue was the guy. He said it.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you ever want to laugh your tail off, just search Lakers Kings Fix You from the 2001 Western Conference Finals, and it's a whole, again, montage of just referee screw jobs to the Sacramento Kings and the whole conspiracy theory that the league had it in for the Lakers to get to the finals. It's absolutely tremendous.
Mark, if low quality Corey begins to really cut out, it's your fault. It's your fault.
That. You know what? I found a really good spot. The background is obviously not flattering. The lighting obviously is terrible.
The lighting's not great. Yeah,
it's terrible. But we have to make the show work. Locker room. The reason why the Athletics' Mark Cabola yelled text at Chris is because that's everybody else coming in from the locker room. I had to leave early to get here to do a show with Chris and Randy. We appreciate you for leaving a double like. We appreciate those that leave likes, share the episodes, that subscribe. That goes a super long way for us, and we greatly appreciate it. Swan, Low Res Corey loves you back. And Low Res Corey was only reduced to 1 day this week, so progress on that front. Chris, the show today, I want to get into CJ Stroud, and I think it's imperative to get into this rookie quarterback because Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin have both said it about him. This is no ordinary rookie quarterback, at least according to them. And stat sheet aside, he had his best game, out of 3 against the Jaguars last week. I don't know why I blanked on that. He had his best game out of 3 so far last week, and the Texans beat the Jaguars by 20. Looked really solid. Everything looked like it came together, and this is not going to be an easy challenge for this Steelers defense.
No, it's not, and I don't want to give away the farm here because I want you guys to go to dkpittsburghsports.com and read it. But it's coming sometime tomorrow. Later today will be a Steelers film breakdown of Keanu Benton, so look forward to that. I'm going through the film, man, the dude's impressive. But tomorrow I will be looking at the Texans side of things for the upcoming game, and I am focusing on CJ Stroud, not only because of what Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin said. I've already been preparing to do this because I've been watching the film. But as a teaser, the one word I'm going to use is anticipation. He is a really, really good passer in terms of anticipating when his receivers will be getting out of their routes, where, whenever they break out of the routes, whether it's an in route, whether it's a dig, or whether it's an out, whatever it is, when they're breaking. There was one throw in particular that I can remember, even though he is not open by the time he throws the ball, he is anticipating his receiver running the correct route and being in the right spot. And the ball isn't necessarily perfect, but by the time the receiver actually turns around, the ball's already almost halfway to his receiver. That is impressive stuff for almost any NFL quarterback, but for a rookie playing his third game in the National Football League, it's impressive. It really, really is. I'll get more into it later, but he is very, very good at not allowing the pocket collapsing in on him to freak him out and to stress him out. And he's also really good at anticipating routes. And it's just very, very, very impressive to see from a guy. He might end up becoming the best quarterback in this class for sure.
And that's exactly, what people in the chat are saying too. B-Phil says CJ, I think, shows that Carolina chose the wrong quarterback. Very possible. Randy brings up, my review on CJ Stroud has been easygoing and in control, that he uses a variety of receivers. And that's exactly
never looks panicked.
But that's exactly what Mike Tomlin and Tara Lawson are saying about him. He doesn't look like a rookie. He looks like he's experienced beyond his years. It certainly helps that at Ohio State, he had some guy named Jackson Smith and Jigba and some guy named Chris Olave and just a really insanely deep wide receivers core that is playing in the NFL as we speak. Yeah. So, CJ Stroud had a really good offense to run at Ohio State and obviously had a ton of success in doing it. 20 of 30, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. 118.8 rating against the Jaguars last week for Stroud. And look, he has speed to work with, meaning Dameon Pierce at running back. They love Tank Dell at wide receiver, and Tara Lawson had a lot of really good things to say about Tank Dell today. Nico Collins is no slouch either. It's kind of weird being a native Ohioan and seeing an Ohio State quarterback throw to a Michigan receiver. Don't really like that, but, you got to move along with it. But look, when it comes to this defense and what they're going to be able to do, and you'll read more about this on DKPittsburghSports.com. I think the experience that specifically the inside linebackers gained last week against the Raiders, and you can extend this and develop this back into the secondary. The secondary stepped up and made a bunch of plays. The inside linebackers made a bunch of plays. And obviously the defensive line has been great this season. So last week's game as an opportunity to really bring things together, I think is massive going forward for the Steelers, and especially in preparation for this matchup.
Yeah, there was a comment here that I wanted to show here, and this is actually might be a really cool matchup. Over under on Kendrick Green penalties, and the main reason I say that is because I've been watching the film on Keanu Benton, and I'm gonna put out that later today. Listen, Keanu Benton versus Kendrick Green could be a really, really interesting matchup in this, because we know the tackles are they have none. Houston just doesn't have any.
No, they're all hurt.
They're all hurt. And so they're already going to have a hard enough time blocking Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt on the edge. So where the Steelers could really, really win on Sunday is if their interior defenders are able to get penetration. And so that's why I'm looking at what is Keanu Benton going to possibly do if he's ever lined up against Kendrick Green. And I've seen Kendrick Green in pass protection before, both as a center and as a guard. It's not been pretty. And Keanu Benton's already showing signs of becoming a pretty darn good pass rusher.
He's so athletic. He was my favorite rookie in this class. And if you read any of my preseason content, I've been on Keanu Benton from day one.
Yeah.
Jake Schutz
I've been on him since the Senior Bowl.
There you go.
I can't tell you, since the Senior Bowl, I've been thoroughly impressed with Keanu Benton. He was definitely one of the winners there in Mobile, Alabama. And then obviously when the draft comes around and the Steelers end up getting him, it's like, man, that's that could be a steal.
By the way, Keanu Benton, Nick Herbig, all the Wisconsin guys are riding high because they just beat Purdue this past week. And going through the locker room, I saw a Wisconsin hoodie draped over Corey Trice's locker room. Poor Corey Trice, insult to injury. Ooh. And he told me today that was a product of Nick Herbig. So Jake Shoot Stuff says, sorry, I'm late. See, Jake, here's the beautiful thing about you being late. You can rewind and go on demand on DK Pittsburgh Sports on YouTube for the Southside Beat. So if you're late to the show, whether you're 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if you missed the show, we're on demand. We're available where podcasts are found. That is what I call plugging on the fly. And I wanted to bring up, Josh says, yuck, Powerade.
Yeah.
I do like a Powerade sometimes.
It was
Powerade
5 for $5 at the grocery store. It was 5 for $5 at the grocery store.
Yeah,
it was get a Gatorade for $3 or get 5 Powerades for $5. I mean,
is Benton starting? Teresa asks. Here's the thing about that. I don't think at this point it matters who starts up front because they're going to get their snaps anyway. Keanu Benton's going to play plenty by this point, and he's increasingly seeing his snaps go up. Now, with Cam Hayward down, it's more of a collective effort to replace him, and that's kind of what they're preaching right now. Mm-hmm. When I think about Keanu Benton's play, he's not going to be the quote-unquote true nose over Montravius Adams. But because of his speed, this was my Kalijah Kancey argument at the draft. If the Steelers were going to look at Kalijah Kancey, this was my argument. Not a true nose, but really athletic and fast enough to play on the defensive end slot opposite Larry Ogunjobi or opposite if it's the Marvin Leal moving around. But this is where I think Keanu Benton will shine is those guards for Houston. Look, they're missing the tackles. The guards for Houston aren't great either. And Keanu Benton, for all of his speed, he's going to be able to make some plays and then open up more opportunities for TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith.
Jake Shoot Stuff is asking if I had a rough night. Actually, so no, I did not have a rough night. Usually the rough nights come on the weekends, but no. Actually, so it's funny, like Powerade and Gatorade are actually really, really good for if you're trying to do anything with your voice. Obviously, we're doing a podcast right now, so I'm doing a lot of talking. I also, anytime that I used to lead worship in church, I sing, I've been singing for years. And so usually one of my go-tos for like anything for the throat is actually either a Gatorade or Powerade because of the sodium in it. So it's actually really, really good for your throat. I like it a lot.
Steeler Girl says she wishes we could see more Broderick Jones. I think you are not alone in that assessment, Steeler Girl 277. Sure. I think a lot of people are waiting to see more Broderick Jones. Now, I don't necessarily think that Dan Moore is going to be benched anytime soon, or Chuks Okorafor for that matter. And I will maintain that Chuks on the right side is better than Dan Moore on the right side, is better than Broderick Jones on the right side, if that makes sense. I don't know about the left side, though. I don't know at this point if Broderick Jones is better than Dan Moore or if Dan Moore is better than Broderick Jones. Dan Moore deserved to start out of training camp. He earned that job out of training camp. I was in complete agreement with Mike Tomlin in the call to start Dan Moore week 1. After what I've seen for 3 weeks, I'm putting the jury out right now on Dan Moore as the left tackle. I'm not saying rest of the season. I'm not saying specifically in week 4, but after what I saw in 3 weeks, I'm not really encouraged right now. B. Phil asks, he's wondering if this is the week we get to see Jones and Joey Porter Jr. start. I don't think this will be the week for either. No, and I think for Joey Porter Jr., as we've asked the last couple of weeks, and I wrote something on Porter last week, I believe it was. Porter is currently in a role where he's developing into being more than just a dime cornerback. And Porter right now has stuff to work on from a technical perspective. And he's very handsy. That was the tape study coming out of Penn State. He's very handsy. He likes to play physical, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in the NFL, there's a certain way to do it without getting flagged. Now, he's played very well in the snaps that he has gotten. I'm not sure exactly how many more he's going to get this year. If you look at the week 1, week 2, week 3, it's gone 7, 14, 27 for his snap counts. So it's been doubled each week. He's not going to play 54 snaps this week. But if he gets somewhere in the realm of 25 to 35, 25 to 30, I think that's a good number for him right now.
I think when you're near the beginning of a season, and Mike Tomlin refers to this quite a bit during the press conferences, this is still a time where the Steelers are trying to kind of figure out the right variables to the formula. To kind of put it in a poor way, but I think you might understand what I'm trying to say. It's like they're still trying to figure out how they're going to make everything work whenever they really, really need to go. Obviously, you don't have a lot of time to try to figure this out. You don't have time to, you can't wait until week 7, week 8, week 9 to be like, okay, now we're ready to go. And oh crap, we're already too far behind. Now we're playing catch up.
Right.
But in the earlier stages of the season, I think all teams at this point are still trying to figure out, okay, is Dan Moore just having a couple of really bad games, or is it really time to go to Broderick Jones? Okay, Joey Porter Jr. has looked really good. in a smaller sample size. Do we want to just throw him out there and see what he does with a really, really heavy workload?
Mm-hmm.
And if we do, is that going to end up costing us a game? It's not anything. I think anything to do with the football season, you don't see switches like very often, like a hard switch. You usually see kind of gradual. Keanu Benton is doing really good, so he's seeing a slow rise in his usage. Joey Porter Jr. has looked really good so far, so you're seeing a slow rise in his usage. Yes. And I think it's even like less when you're talking about bringing somebody's workload down, especially when they play a pivotal role like on the offensive line, like a left tackle with Dan Moore. Mm-hmm. I think when you decide to make that switch, it's got to get to a point where we're like, okay, it's a point of no return, because I think that once you start getting to this point of, okay, now it's time to switch with Robert Jones and he's not ready, then you're in this flip-flop mode. And I think that's one of the reasons why last year we waited until Mike Tomlin waited until week 4 to pull the plug on Mitch Trubisky to put Kenny Pickett out there. Yes. Because once you make that switch, there's no going back.
That's right.
And so and that's important to remember too.
A couple of comments coming across about Desmond King. Playing him over Chandon Sullivan. How far along is he? Here's what Terrell Austin had to say about him today, and I'm going to paraphrase this quote. He thinks he's smart. He thinks he's tough. And Desmond King got his first hat last week, so he was finally activated for week 3. And this is now direct quote from Terrell Austin. We're hopefully accelerating him, keeping him going, and at some point we'll see him on the field. Yeah. So it's more of a gradual process than maybe anticipated with a veteran like Desmond King. There's no Latrobe setting. There's no training camp setting. There's no preseason like Quan Alexander had to do. He's still learning the defense, and one that's as complex and plays as many different coverage types that the Steelers like to do. It's not easy for a guy like Desmond King to come off the pine in week 1 and then pick up things right away and just get in. Now, one might be able to say, yes, Chandon Sullivan hasn't played great and Desmond King could be better, or Levi Wallace up until last week hadn't played great. So I'm going to say Desmond King's going to be active again this week. There's no reason for him not to be. And especially with Gunnar Olszewski getting out of the concussion protocol today, Desmond King's going to be in line to return some kicks along with Calvin Austin. So I do believe that Desmond King's going to be activated, but how many snaps does he play? Is it in the slot? Is it in the dime? Is it outside? Who's going to say on that one? We'll have to find that on Sunday.
Yeah. Swan269 asks, do you think the offense will improve noticeably when DJ comes back? It can't hurt for sure. You could always use a receiver that gets open as much as Deontay Johnson does. So it can't hurt. They could use all the weapons they can possibly get their hands on. So I don't know about improve noticeably. I think it's going to take a lot more than just one player to get this offense to really get going. It's going to take a serious, not to try to sound too much like Mike Tomlin here, but it really is going to take a collective effort from Matt Canada and the game planning and the play calling all the way down to Kenny Pickett being consistent and being accurate, making throws from the pocket, extending plays when he needs to the offensive line blocking, to running backs finding the right lanes, to receivers getting open. It really is a collective effort. Deontay Johnson helps that effort for sure. I don't know if just his insertion back into the lineup will be enough to be like, oh, okay, now everything is going to be fine with the offense. There's a lot of problems outside of that.
Brad Wing is here. For those that are wondering, Brad Wing is here, and we'll have an injury report. I'm not sure what time. Given it's a West Coast game, they're going to probably wait and see what the Raiders release, or the Texans rather.
That's not West Coast. It's Texas, man.
Central time. Listen, the gateway to the West is St. Louis. Houston is west of St. Louis, I believe. So I'm not a big geography guy. That's why I'm a writer. I'm not a geographer. I'm not a mather. I'm not any of that. I'm a writer. How does the quarterback learn quickly how to defeat zone coverage? That comes from Randy. It depends on the quarterback. It depends on the scheme. It depends on the system.
And all zone defenses are different too. There's not one is the same as another one. It depends on how exotic they are with their blitzes. Obviously, facing Dick LeBeau's defense back in the day, quarterbacks had a really, really difficult time with that. Nowadays Nowadays, it's more difficult because now teams are so obsessed with let's get to the quarterback by sending the least amount of guys possible. Geography 101 by Corey.
I'm not a geographer. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, man!
I'm picturing what a map looks like in my head, and the question I'm asking myself is Houston west of St. Louis.
let me use the geography point that I brought up a couple days ago. Between Dallas and San Diego. You know where San Diego is, like all the way Southern California.
I'm Googling a map as we speak.
El Paso is the halfway point between Dallas and San Diego.
Oh, Houston's way west of St. Louis. Come on.
But it's not West Coast.
Don't care.
It's not West Coast.
Listen, the
Houston
Texas Rangers,
is far from West Coast.
Texas Rangers and Houston Astros are the American League West. That's
as a matter of fact, there is an actual coast name for where Houston is. It's called the Gulf Coast. Legit. It is the Gulf Coast.
The Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros are the American League West. That's where I got that from. That's where my brain proc to. I was listening to a lot of
Rangers and Astros are screwed in that division, by the way.
Barber, I know. Yes, yes. It's fueled partially by Waffle House. I do love me the Waffle House, the classic breakfast. I mean, the hash browns.
I got a Waffle House 5 minutes from my house.
Oh, that's a blessing, I would say.
And I've been there one time. I'm not a big waffle. I love breakfast food, but I've got access to all kinds of breakfast food here.
I am a Midwesterner, Josh Dobbs. That's the funny thing. Technically speaking, I am a Midwesterner being from Ohio. And Ohio is its own, black hole of a state as it is. So,
and I will not be going to the Houston airport, thank God, because Jake Shoot stuff is right. Houston airport is a nightmare. I will not be going there. I will be driving 4-hour drive from Dallas. So
that's not bad.
Bing, bada boom.
Breakfast food's the best food. We can all agree on that. Yes, you can get pecans on that waffle. I like how we've divulged this conversation because of my lack of knowledge of geography.
Kirby Keller asks, why does Canada insist on running plays when the defense has 8 in the box? If I had the answer to that question, Kirby, I might be able to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. I don't have the answer to that question. Nobody does. I don't understand either. I don't understand why the Steelers run so often when they're under center. I don't understand why they throw so often while they're in shotgun. Not saying they need to run majority of the time when they're in shotgun. Not saying they need to throw majority of the time when they're under center. Just mix it up. Don't telegraph your plays.
I'm getting laughed at, apologized to for being from Ohio within the chat. And look, Josh says Ohio is an hour away. Yes, it is. However, Ohio, in the technical sense, is part of the Midwest. We still count. So I will take my brand as a Midwesterner, and I will absolutely run with it. Mr. Nick of Time asks, why can't Kenny audible out of those plays? Here's the thing. He can. It's just a matter of, do the Steelers have the personnel to be able to audible out of it? Are they going to put what would you say, 12 personnel or 3 tight ends set on the field, and then, oh no, Houston or whoever it is loading the box, we have to check out of this, and then you're going to put Pat Freiermuth wide and then probably run a different direction, or just run outside or a power counter. Like it's not that. It sounds so easy, like, if you play Madden, you could just audible into anything you want, but it's not that easy when you're in the NFL and a defense has certain personnel on the field. You have to check off of certain things.
Well, and this is where I have an issue with Canada's like concepts or at least scheming is, like, there were times where the Steelers would move a guy in motion and the Raiders aren't in man coverage, they're in zone coverage, and so then the corner who's on the edge to the play side then comes over and is now lined up on the edge to the play side, and because the receiver moved in motion across, he's no longer, now you have one less person to try to block a guy who's right there to try to get it. So it's frustrating. It really, really is. There's a couple questions that I want to get to. We'll try to save them for like closer to the end.
You want
to
take this one from Swan real quick? That's on the screen.
Yeah, I saw that. So, okay, listen, as much as I would love to try to do something like that, just because, mob mentality is always, nothing ever goes wrong with mob mentality. No, listen, whenever I am working a game, I don't care if it's football or baseball, I am as professional as it gets. There's a switch that goes off in my brain where any kind of fandom of the sport or anything, it's just automatically gets turned off. I'm no longer. It is 100% work at that point, and so that's what it'll be on Sunday for me. So
you said you had a couple questions you wanted to address.
Yeah, there's a couple. So hold on. There was one. It was kind of off topic, so I wanted to make sure that we at least get to it. Oh yeah. I don't mind getting a little bit behind the scenes here. Miltank's uncle asked, quick question: How did you guys get your start with DK? If not too off topic, Corey, I'll let you go with that first, man.
Very simple. DK put out a tweet and said, "I need a pit rider." I responded to said tweet and said, "I will be your pit rider." Year and some change later, here I am.
Yeah, for me, I was actually a subscriber for a long time. I wasn't, an original lunatic or anything like that, but I was a subscriber for a while, and was covering the Rangers for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation Network thing. Did that for a couple of years. And just through constant communication of being a subscriber for a while, he eventually had an opening for somebody to help out with Steelers coverage, not necessarily being the Steelers guy because Dale Lawley was still here. And so it was just somebody to help out. And then one extra thing that I brought to the table was obviously baseball coverage because I'd been on a major league beat for multiple seasons. And so then it was just kind of a thing where we kind of worked it out where I was going to come on and help with Steelers, but also be able to help out with Pirates too. And so I did that. And then when Dale left, became the major beat writer. And so and then on and on, I am where I am now. But that's how I got my start.
Phil, I made that sound way easier than it was. It really wasn't that easy. I just went from beginning to end. I just went from start to finish. I skipped all the detail between. Yes, there was a whole process, interview, send resumes, send clips, all that other stuff. Trust me, there was a process with it.
This is actually a good thing to kind of bring up. I know it's funny. What Swan269 says, work Chris versus Steeler Chris is an eternal struggle. Once you become a journalist, like a sports journalist, and you really start working a major league beat, and I think we kind of went through this before, but once you see how the sausage is made of a team, it kind of breaks down the barriers of all this mystical fandom stuff that you used to have before you were on that side of things. And I think that kind of goes along, at least for me, it kind of broke that down for the teams that I was a fan of across the board, and still teams that I'm a fan of to this day. I am still like a hardcore like Chelsea fan, like for Premier League, but I am nowhere near the type of fan that I used to be 6-7 years ago before I ever got into sports journalism. So
that's true.
It's like once you kind of cross that threshold, you really like, even whenever you are still a fan of a team, it's totally different from what it used to be before.
My first ever sports jersey that I was like gifted, aside from stuff my dad already had that was like handed down, my first ever sports jersey was Marshall Faulk. My teams growing up when I was a kid were those Greatest Show on Turf Rams. Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt, those were my teams growing up. And then, of course, when you get into sports journalism, you start to remove some of that stuff. My dad called me yesterday because Brooks Robinson passed away, former third baseman of the Orioles. That was his favorite player growing up. So, you learn to, when you get into this field, you learn to not remove some of the fandom because you're always going to be a fan of the sports. But you learn to remove some of the investment of like, let me put it to you this way. If my favorite team, and I won't say specifically, loses a game, I'm not going to lose sleep over it anymore.
No.
I'm just not. Like, that's how it goes. Swan, no, he did it. That was a Photoshop.
Yeah, it was.
That was a Photoshop. I'm sorry you got. I pointed it out right away. I'm sorry that you got on that. No,
the first thing I did as soon as I saw it on Twitter was I went to his Instagram and looked for stories, and they weren't there. So.
No, you got there, Swan. I'm sorry to report on that. And yeah, Barber, we do.
Yeah.
But there's a fine line between being a professional and being a fan. You could be a fan of outcome, meaning, like, for example, the Pitt, West Virginia backyard brawl last year. I'm so amped up from that football game. The MJ Devonshire Pitt 6, I was there live for it. I felt the press box shaking because the stadium got so loud. You become a fan of those moments. You become a fan of those environments. You become a fan of those just events in a general scope. You start to kind of separate yourself from, again, that typical team fandom where I use the analogy, I'm not going to lose sleep over if such and such team loses, or I'm not going to go, call everybody and taunt my best friends of the other team, or fans of the other team because my team won anymore. I'm just not going to do that anymore. So when you get into this business, you have a different perspective. Like Chris said, how the sausage is made. You have a different perspective on how this whole thing works.
And it doesn't mean you still can't love what you do. I mean, I absolutely love what I do. I still love, I still remember even moments last year. There wasn't anything overly special about a 9-8 Steelers team, but the George Pickens catch in Cleveland, like you see that happen live. You're like,
you say holy bleep. You're in the press box saying holy bleep.
Wow, and then during my time on the Rangers beat, I covered 2 no-hitters, and the first no-hitter I covered, you're just I just took a moment to be like, I got to cover a no-hitter, like legit. And for anybody who's a Padres fan, I got to cover the first no-hitter in Padres history.
There you go.
So, I mean, be jealous if you're a Padres fan. So, I mean, those are really cool moments that you get to, that as what part of what we do, you're part of it, but you're not part of it. It's an interesting dynamic. It really is.
So we'll take one more from Trevor before we get out of here on a Thursday, a coordinator Thursday. We didn't really talk about much Matt Canada today. We did it. We're not going to do it now. We're not going to start. We're not going to start. Trevor asked, how did you guys get into sports writing? Great question as well. This is the fun part about my career. I began my college career as a pharmacy major. Yes, you heard that right. I grew up around my mother, who was a pharmacy technician. My dad worked at a steel mill. My parents divorced when I was in high school. I lived with my dad for a bit, but my mom, when I was growing up, was a pharmacy technician. So I'm thinking, this sounds cool. It looks fun. Science is cool. I want to make a boatload of money, which pharmacists get paid a lot of money. And I went, let's try that. Did not work. So I, stopped a little bit for college, paused a little bit in my college career and kind of refocused and realized what I actually liked and what I actually wanted to do. And I've always been a radio head. I've always been in the newspaper. My legal drug distributor. My grandfather always had this little blue, it might have been a Radio Shack brand radio, where he would put the Cleveland Indians games on when I was a kid. And I always loved listening to radio, and I always loved reading the newspaper. And, that's how it started, really, the passion for the industry. And then I just went to college for it. And, here I am, I guess, 9 years later. So that's a good topic to end the show on. What about you, Chris?
For me, I went the non-traditional route. I was a really immature kid when I got out of high school. I didn't want to go to college. I thought I could make a career in music. I did not.
You still do your music thing, though.
No, I do, and I still love music. I just, it's just, once it's in your soul, it's there. It's never going away. And I was in a band for a few years, and still friends with those guys to this day. It was just, we didn't really make any noise outside of the Dallas area, but it was a lot of fun. But then after that, kind of, snowballed. I was like, okay, I need to go to college, and so. My wife, at the time, girlfriends, at the time we were just dating, she started going to college because she had gotten out of the Navy. So I started going to college at the same time. It was later. I ended up getting just my associate's degree. And then I just was like, okay, well, let me try to do something on the side. And I just did a whole bunch of freelancing stuff on the side. I wrote for a couple blog sites. And I just kept doing it. If there was an opportunity to write for somebody, I was writing. Just so I could show people that I could do it. And then if anybody could give me a crack at showing people that I could be a reporter, then I'll prove it to you. And so I did that. And, lo and behold, I've been in the industry now for 4 years now.
There you go.
So yeah, it's been fun, dude. Really, there's a lot of people who really hate on 2-year degrees, man. Listen, I got to where I wanted to be. I didn't need a fancy bachelor's and master's degree. No offense to those who have them. I'm no offense to those who have them. If anything, there's still a part of me that wishes, now that I know where I am, I wish I would have been able to go the traditional route. I really do, because there's so many other things you do learn along the way. But there's for real, there's a lot of reasons why I wish I'm glad with the road that I took, because I figured out a lot about myself, learned a lot about myself. Not to get too introspective or personal here, but
no, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, legit, life's highway, and I want to ride it all night long.
We appreciate getting to know you as well, Barber. And good topic to end the show on. Good show today, Chris. We'll be back, of course, on a Football Friday tomorrow. I have no knowledge, rather, if DK and Ramon will be live at 4 today. I've not seen like a stream setup. I've not seen a schedule. So
I do know that DK is still in Philly. The Pirates are playing the Phillies tonight. It's the last game of that series. So I honestly don't know. I just know that DK is still stuck in Philly. Poor DK. Yeah.
Well, hey, that's the thing, Mr. Nick of Time, before we get out of here. It never just has to be about football. We're here for more than that.
Yeah.
And we will be here for football and more on a Football Friday tomorrow.
Yeah.
When we're back on the South Side Beat. He's Chris. I'm Corey. This has been the South Side Beat on a Thursday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. I will be in better quality. I promise. Peace out, everyone.